Hello, Mark. My name is Lydia. My student number is S04411056. The title of the speech is Everything You Hear on Film is a Lie by Tasos Frantzolas. I'm a sophomore at NCUE. I want to start by doing an experiment. I'm going to play 3 videos of a rainy day, but I've replaced the audio of one of the videos, and instead of the sound of rain, I've added the sound of bacon frying. So I want you to think carefully which one the clip with the bacon is. Rain falls. Rain falls. Rain falls. Alright, actually I lied. Layer of bacon. Bacon sizzles. Applause. My point here isn't really to make you hungry every time you see a rainy scene, but it's to show that our brains are conditioned to embrace the lies. We're not looking for a currency. So, on the subject of deception, I wanted to quote one of my favorite authors in The Decade of Lying, Oscar Wilde establishes the idea that all bad art comes from copying nature and being realistic, and all great art comes from lying and deceiving, and telling beautiful, untrue things. So when you are watching a movie and a phone rings, it's not actually ringing. It's being added later in post-production in a studio. All of the sounds you hear are fake. Everything apart from the dialogue is fake. When you watch a movie and you see a bird flapping its wings flip. They haven't really recorded the birds. It sounds a lot more realistic if you record a sheet of or shaking kitchen gloves flaps. The burning of a cigarette up close. Cigarette burns. It actually sounds a lot more authentic if you take a small saran wrap ball and release it. A saran wrap ball being released punches. Punch. Oops, let me play that again. Punch. That's often done by sticking a knife in vegetables, usually cabbage. Cabbage stabbed with a knife. The next one is breaking bones break. Well, no one was really harmed. It's actually breaking celery or frozen lettuce. Breaking frozen lettuce or celery. Laughter. Making the right sounds is not always as easy as a trip to the supermarket and going to the vegetable section, but it's often a lot more complex. It's often a lot more complicated than that. So let's reverse engineer together the creation of a sound effect. One of my favorite stories comes from Frank Serenfa. He's a contributor to our library and a great sound designer for Tron and Star Trek and others. He was part of the Paramount teams that won the Oscar for Best Sound for The Hunt for Red October. In this Cold War classic in the 90s, they were asked to produce the sound of the propeller of the submarine. So they had a small problem. They couldn't really find a submarine in West Hollywood. So basically what they did is they went to a friend's swimming pool and Frank performed a cannonball or bomba. They placed an underwater mic and an overhead mic on outside the swimming pool, so hear what the underwater make sounds like. Underwater plunk. Adding the overhead mic, it sounded a bit like this. Water splashes. So now let's take the sound and pitch it one one octave down, sort of like slowing down a record. Water splashes at lower octave, and then they remove a lot of high frequencies. Water splashes, and pitch it down another octave. Water splashes a lower octave, and then they added a little bit of the splash from the overhead microphone. Water splashes, and by looping and repeating that sound, they got these purple terms. So creativity and technology put together in order to create the illusion that we are inside the submarine. But once you've created your sounds and you sync them into the image, you want those sounds to live in the world of the story. And one of the best ways to do that is to add reverb. So this is the first audio tool I want to talk about, reverberation or reverb. It's a persistence of a sound after the original sound has ended. So it's sort of like all the reflections for the materials the objects, object, objects, and the walls around the sound. Take, for example, the sound of a gunshot. The original sound is less than half a second long. Gunshot. By adding reverb, we can make it sound like it was recorded inside the bathroom. Gunshot reverse in bathroom, or like it was recorded inside a chapel or or church. Gunshot reverse church, or in a canyon. Gunshot reverse in Kenya. So reverb gives a lot of information about the space between the listener and the original sound source. If the sound is taste, then reverb is sort of like the smell of the sound. But reverb can do a lot more listening to a sound with a lot less reverberation, reverberation, a lot less reverberation than the on-screen action is going to immediately signify to to us that we're listening to a commentator to an objective narrator that's not participating in the on-screen action. Also emotionally in intimate moments in cinema are often heard with zero reverb because that's how it would sound if someone was speaking inside our ear on the completely other side. Adding a lot of reverb to a voice is going to make us think that we are listening to a flashback, or perhaps that we are inside the head of a character of that we are listening to the voice of God, or even more powerful in film, Morgan Freeman. Laughter, so applause. But what are some other tools or hacks that sound designers use? Well, here's a really big one. It's silence. A few moments of silence is going to make us pay attention. And in the Western world, we are not really used to verbal silence. They are considered a walk to root. So silence preceded verbal communication can create a lot of tension. But imagine a really big Hollywood movie where it's full of explosion and automatic guns. Loud stuff being loud anymore. After a while, so in a yin yang way, silence loud, loudness and loudness need silence for either of them to have any effect. But what does silence mean? Well, it depends how it's used in each film. Silence can place us inside the head of a character or provoke thought. We often relate silences with com- contemplation, meditation, being deep in thought. But apart from having one meaning, silence becomes a blank canvas upon which a viewer is invited to the paint their own thoughts. But I want to make it clear there's no such thing as silence. And I know this sounds like the most preten- pre- pretentious TikTok statement ever. But even if you were to enter a room with zero reverberation and zero external sounds, you will still be able to hear the pumping of your own blood. And in cinema, traditionally, there was never a silent moment because of the sound of the projector. And even in today's Dolby world, there's not really any moment of silence if you listen around you. There's always some sort of noise. Now, since there's no such thing as silence, what do filmmakers and sound designers use? Well, as a synonym, they often use ambiences. Ambiences are the unique background sounds that are specific to each location. Each location has a unique sound, and each room has a unique sound, which is called room tone. So here's a recording of a market in Morocco. Voices, music, and here's a recording of Times Square in New York. Traffic sounds, car horns, voices. Room tone is the addition of all the noises inside the room. The ventilations, the heating, the fridge. Here's a recording of my apartment in Brooklyn. You can hear the ventilation, the boiler, the fridge, and street traffic. Ambiences work in the most primal way. They can speak directly to our brain's subconscious leads. So birds crimping outside your window may indicate normality, perhaps because as a species we've been used to less sounds every morning for millions of years. Birds chirp. On the other hand, industrial sounds have been introduced to us a little more recently, even though I really like them personally. They've been used by one of my heroes, David Lynch, and his sound designer, Alan Split. Insta- Industrial sounds often carry negative connotation, machine noises. Now sound effects can tap into our emotional memory. Occasionally they can be so significant that they become a character in a movie. The sound of thunder may indicate divine intervention or anger. Thunder. Church bells can remind us of the passing of time, or perhaps our own mortal, mortality. Bells rings. A breaking of glass can indicate the end of a relationship of a fresh glass breaks. Scientists believe that dissonant sounds, for example, brass or wind instrument play very loud, may remind us of animal hosts in hosts in of animal house in nature and therefore creates a sense of irritations of fear. Breath and wind instruments, please. So now we've spoken about on-screen sounds, but occasionally the source of the sound cannot be seen. That's what we call off-screen sounds, or acoustic or acousmatic sounds will return acousmatic sounds from comes from Pythagoras in ancient Greece, who used to teach behind a veil or curtain for years, now revealing himself to his disciples. To his disciple. I think the mathematician and philosopher thought that in that way his studies might focus more on the voice, voice and his words and its meaning rather than visual of his speaking. So sort of like the Wizard of Oz or 1984's Big Brother separating the voice from its source, separating cause and effect source sort of creates a sense of ubiquity and pano, pano, panopticism and ubiquity or panopticism, and therefore authority. There's a strong tradition of acousmatic sounds in monasteries in Rome and Milan's used to sing in rooms up in galleries close to the ceiling, creating the illusion that we are listening to angels up in the sky. Richard Wagner famously created the hidden arca- hidden orchestra that was placed in the pit between the stage and the audience. And one of my heroes, FX Green, famously hid in dark corners of clubs. I think what all these masters knew is that by hi- hide, hide, hiding the source, you create a sense of mystery that has been seen in cinema over and over with Hitchcock and Ridley Scott in Alien. Hearing a sound without knowing its source is going to create some sort of tension, although it can minimize certain visual restrictions that directors have and can show something that wasn't there during film. And if all this sounds a little theore- theoretical, I wanted to play a little video. Toys, squids, typewriting, writer, drums, ping pong, knives being sharpened, record scratches, saw cuts, woman screams. What I'm sort of trying to demonstrate demonstrate with these tools is that sound is a language. It can trade us by transporting us geographically. It can change the mood. It can set the pace. It can make us laugh or it can make us scared. On a personal level, I fell in love with that language in a few years ago and somehow managed to make it into some sort of perfection. And I think with our work through the sound library, we're trying to kind of expand the vocabulary of of that language, and in that way, we want to offers the right tools to sound designers, filmmakers, and video game and app designers to keep telling even better stories and creating even more beautiful lives. So thanks for listening. Applause.